Welcome to the DeFi Summit panel, Enter the D-Cloud, Building the Unstoppable Web. I have the great pleasure to be able to speak today to Greg and Eric. I'm Mona, Chief of Staff at Nuri, the world's first blockchain banking service based in Berlin. But more importantly, I would love to have our two speakers introduce themselves. So maybe, Greg, would you like to start and give us a quick intro?
Sure. Hey, thanks, Mona. Super excited to be here. My name is Greg Osuri. I'm the CEO founder for Akash Network.
And Eric?
Yeah, great. My name is Eric Ma, and I am the CMO for Deeper Network. And we have solutions for censorship, privacy, as well as Web3 internet access.
I am very privileged to be here with both of you. Thanks so much for taking the time. And I think we'll dive right in to the questions, because I do have a few for you, and I hope we get through them all. So first question, I will start with you, Eric.
Okay.
What do you think you would say are the pros and cons of D-Cloud or generally decentralized networks versus, the more traditional cloud networks that we all know?
Absolutely. Even though we don't have solutions for D-Cloud in our immediate goals at Deeper Network, but it is something that we will consider down the road. We have some potential partnerships right now that we're studying as well. But I'll just kind of talk about it from a decentralized versus centralized infrastructure point of view. And I think decentralization has been a huge movement in the last 10 years. It's been talked about for 15, 20 years, believe it or not already. As far as pros for centralization, of course, there's the efficiency. When it's centralized, a lot of the centralized systems, because they are privatized a lot of times, they have the way that they're managed, the way that they work becomes more, it's more controlled, right? So they are further developed, and they're more efficient. They tend to be more stable. The user face and the friendliness of their interface usually is pretty apparent, especially when something that's decentralized comes out at first. So, but there's big drawbacks to centralization as we see today, and that's why there's so many people moving towards decentralization. So with the cons of centralization is there's a concentration of power. And I think if we're talking about in our case, we have a VPN solution, which is basically the opposite of a VPN, a virtual private network, which has a central point of weakness. So we see that as a huge weakness for centralization. And the concentration of power of these servers and of these companies, a lot of people don't really realize as well. And also, if you think about it, it's very tightly coupled. So a lot of times when something within the network, when it's so tightly coupled, if something fails, the whole thing, you'll start to see a chain reaction of other things failing. So that's kind of a centralized structure. And then it's as far as changes goes, because it's the way it's built, a lot of times it's very rigid to changes. So it's not as flexible as something that's more decentralized. So as far as decentralized goes, some of the pros, distribution of power. Nobody really has a centralized control and power. It's more loosely coupled so that not everything is tied. If something changes or something breaks, you might not even feel an effect versus something that's more centralized. And I think for the most part, decentralization is more adaptable to change. But there are some cons with decentralization, especially in these early stages. There's definitely room for growth, as we can see. And then there's also tends to be a little bit inefficient, I think. So a lot of times because the network's maybe not as big, The technology is not quite there yet. It's not fully integrated. And then typically, as we see in a lot of interfaces, it's not as user friendly. So those are things I think there's room for improvement, but I think with time, those things will improve.
Yeah, thank you. Greg, would you like to add any pros and cons?
Yeah, all the things Eric said about centralization, efficiency, and whatnot. But I think, but I think all those are just time, right? So for me, I don't see centralized. Centralized is yesterday, and then the future is decentralized. It's an evolution. It's not better. I mean, it's, of course, it's better, but it's an evolution. It's different, right? That means all the things that we have in terms of efficiency and whatnot will come in decentralized networks itself, and that is just a factor of time. For me, the way I look at it as a developer, open source, right? Like for me, decentralized systems are open source, centralized are not, right? So that opens up a whole different wide variety of advantages as an open source developer. Number one being extensible, right? Like, so I can actually build on a decentralized network and have certain sense of guarantee that this network is not going to go against what I built. And now we all are, being in tech for a while, we built on Facebook APIs or even like Amazon APIs or Twitter APIs, and Twitter will just basically launch a feature and will kill your company, right? You don't have that kind of, the centralized infrastructure doesn't give you that kind of guarantees like an open source infrastructure. As a developer, you can actually put time and have the sense of like guarantees that it's not going to go away. Number two is censorship resistant. And today we see, a lot of deplatforming that happens, right? Like deplatforming in Trump era is something, but when you realize a lot of these platforms have so much power, right? Yeah, then power is one of those things that can be used for good or bad, right? I'm not worried about when they're used for good, but I'm really worried about when they're used for bad. And if you tell me nothing bad happens, I'll tell you you're full of shit. So something will happen, something bad will happen, and that's when a centralized platform can censor a sitting U.S. president. That tells you the amount of power these platforms have, right? So right now we are seeing quite a bit of weaponizing this deplatforming by state actors, looking to hurt companies or organizations that have disagreement with these states, right? So there's a lot of weaponizing of deplatforming happening beneath our underneath what we are seeing. That's not getting quite the public attention. I think we as a society owe it to take back the power to ourselves. And third, and the most obvious thing, at least in certain networks like what we see, is the cost effectiveness, right? So, for example, that varies depending on the decentralized network and the economic models. But when it comes to Akash, the cost advantage of using Akash versus a centralized cloud is 1/3, and the reason for that is the at the minimum. I mean, sometimes it's 1/4, like when compared to like Google or whatnot. And the reason for that is because of openness. Open marketplaces generally tend to optimize for the forces of demand supply for pricing versus an individual setting the price, right? So the way I look at it, the three main advantages for decentralized systems. One being open. Openness gives transparency, gives extensible trust. And number two being censorship resistant, essentially giving you a platform that's not going to censor you no matter what. And third is cost effectiveness, that's driven by a market-based pricing versus an individual setting the price. While the cons, obviously, we're so early in the system, so it's not for everyone, right? Like, for example, today, deploying on Akash versus deploying traditional cloud, you need to know what you're doing, right? If you are not, if you don't know how to deploy intricacies of deploying scalable architectures in terms of how do you really achieve resiliency through redundancy, if you're not familiar with these kind of concepts, you can get in trouble. So it's not for everyone, right? So you gotta I mean, will that change tomorrow? Yes, it will, with more abstractions that we build on the decentralized infrastructure, and people are building those abstractions. But as it stands today, it's hard to use. It's for advanced usage. Number two is security, and I know we talk about security a lot. I'm not talking about security on the cloud per se, but personal security, because we take self-custody. One of the advantages of centralized cloud is custodial services, right? They custody on your behalf, and if you get compromised as a human being, if you get kidnapped and whatnot, you're okay. I mean, you don't have too much power, right? With power comes great responsibility. So custody is a big problem the way I see it today in decentralized networks. And third big problem, I think we haven't yet quite seen this proliferate as much as we see with others, is bad actors taking advantage of the system. So you're always going to have the tragedy of the commons. Akash is a great network, censorship resistant, but how is that going to stop bad people, like really bad people doing bad things on the network? And we don't have a cohesive solution for this problem of these what do you call it? The tragedy of the commons, we call it, right? A problem. So yeah. So there's adoption friction, and there's security concerns, and there is this tragedy of the commons problems that I see as a disadvantage of traditional cloud, of decentralized cloud.
Greg, maybe just briefly to touch on the security aspect that you mentioned there at the very end. Can you give a sense to us how secure the dCloud is, and is it actually more or less secure, would you say? I heard a little bit of that in your previous sentences, but it would be really interesting to just also understand, where are we heading in the security infrastructure with dCloud?
dCloud is super secure, arguably a lot more secure than the traditional cloud. And the reason for that is because we enforce secure practices where your traditional cloud doesn't. I hear these terms that if you deploy on Amazon, you're okay, but a lot of people don't take into account that Amazon is just another server running somewhere else, and that has the same level of compromised, envelope that other traditional, applications running on a data center have, right? So, because of that comfort, people tend to get lazy, and people tend to adhere insecure practices. Like I see a lot of nodes being deployed on Amazon. I think arguably about 70% of the nodes are running on Amazon today, and they all have their keys in Amazon itself, right? So if the server on the Amazon gets compromised, you're screwed. You're screwed. There's no guarantee. No one is going to save your keys. Not Jeff Bezos, in fact, they probably have access to your keys, and you don't even know about it, right? So it's that bad. Current cloud is so insecure that people don't talk about it unless something really bad happens, right? So with decentralized cloud, we sort of encourage a behavior that we term redundancy through resiliency. That means if you're deploying a node on Akash, don't put your keys in a single box. Spread it across in 5 boxes. Use remote signers so that in case one box gets compromised or one provider gets compromised, you still have 4 others and you're not compromised as a system. Because we enforce such strict architectures, without which you can really deploy on the decentralized cloud, you're a lot more secure. And we do it in an open way, right? We're fully transparent, we're fully open, we have public scrutiny on everything we put out there. That makes it a lot more secure than your traditional cloud. And hands down, I think decentralized cloud is the future.
Eric, do you have something to add on this topic?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with Akash. Decentralized cloud is the future. On our network, on Deeper Chain, which the mainnet will launch in Q3 of this year. Even though we don't store information per se, it's a lot more secure than say VPN, because none of the information, none of your private data is actually leaving your Deeper connectivity. And I should probably go grab it, but it's basically a hardware. We have hardware that acts as you're not only your own client, but you're also your own server. So whatever it is that you decide to send through the network, the public network, is going to be broken up into pieces. So if you want to send a video or a music file or a picture, that file is going to get broken up into many pieces, and it's all going to be encrypted. And by the end of your destination, wherever you're trying to send it to, it'll all come back together and unencrypted. And so that in itself is very secure. And that's for deeper network. And then as far as the future being that way, we will look at some storage cloud solutions, and that's maybe even with Akash, who knows?
Yeah, I'd love to have deeper nodes running on Akash.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that would be great. I would love if that was the outcome of this.
Yeah.
Eric, maybe on a little bit of a different note, but I think also a very interesting topic. Because we are in the DeFi Summit, or part of the DeFi Summit, I'd love to hear a little bit how DCloud or maybe even Web 3.0 can power DeFi in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of our Web3 gateway, and we are going to be building an ecosystem on Deeper Network. And as a part of that, it'll basically allow people to have access to DeFi. So we will have DeFi products within our DeFi ecosystem. We'll have decentralized NFT stores and ecosystems where people can trade in a kind of a marketplace. We'll have dApps stores where people can stake deeper, developers can stake deeper and make their own dApps, and users on the Deeper chain can purchase these dApps through the store. And then we'll have e-commerce, e-services, and these are all things that's going to be part of our ecosystem. And because we're built on Polkadot substrate, there's going to be that interoperability advantage that we'll have. So our ecosystems will be interconnected with many others. And so by having this gateway where people are leaving or basically is starting to adopt the Web3 ecosystems, they'll have full access and they won't have to worry about losing their data or having their data stolen, but instead they'll have more power in controlling their data. And actually a lot of people in Web3 in the future, they will be data producers, which we all are now. But right now we're producing data that is being basically stolen from us and being sold. And on Web3, that's not going to be the case. And your data and the data that you produce is going to be stored in your own secure space, and you can actually make money off that data, and you can decide what kind of data that you want to sell. So these are all targeted data, packets and stuff that's you create just from browsing and just looking at things and accessing information. So that's how I think Web3, and that's just a small piece of it, is going to empower people in the future.
Greg, any points to add on this topic?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The cognitive dissonance we have in crypto, especially DeFi, is adorable. Like, it is. We call these decentralized projects. Let's take Uniswap, because I'm going to throw Uniswap under the bus here. So if you look at the Uniswap architecture, right, you have smart contracts that is running on Ethereum, and then you have the indexer, which indexes the Ethereum data running on Graph, and then you have the web UI that's running on on Amazon, and then you have a DNS that's running on Cloudflare, right? So yeah, arguably one part of your if you look at your smart contracts that's running on Ethereum network, yes, that's decentralized, great. Your data that's stored, the state is on a shared system, decentralized, great. Let's look at Graph, right? How much do you know these graph is essentially indexed nodes running on servers. Where are these servers running? Amazon, right? So okay, let's go to the web side of things. Like there's a JavaScript application. Where is this JavaScript running? Amazon, right? Okay, let's go to the DNS. Let's go to the third important layer. Where is that DNS running? Probably Amazon or probably Cloudflare, right? you're not decentralized. You're not. Just own it, right? Like, what is the solution? Well, solution is to go to a decentralized cloud. Why? Because, well, when you arguably can see like, okay, our domain is not going to go down. No, you're going to get shut down. People want to shut you down. Oh no, our DNS provider is going to work in our best interest. No, they won't. Right? Oh, Amazon is going to work in our best interest. No, they won't. Right? No, none of them will work in your best interest when trouble comes knocking at your door. So anyway, we need to decentralize, and we have the tools and technologies today to decentralize. I'm still bedazzled as to why Uniswap is not on Handshake. Handshake is a truly decentralized DNS network, right? I'm still bedazzled why Graph is not running nodes on Akash, right? I mean, the indexer nodes. Like, we don't know where these nodes are being run. I'm still bedazzled, like, why the UI is not running on SIA or Skynet or Akash, right? Like, so that needs to be decentralized. Unless I would say like 3/4 of your infrastructure is, which is not decentralized, you're not DeFi, right? You're not decentralized. Second thing, why that's important is like, well, some of the networks get it, some of the networks don't get it. Is there's a huge regulatory risk when you're hosting your web UI on a domain name that's registered under your name, right? Even though you could arguably say like you are not running an exchange because you need licenses to run exchanges. There's an argument that could be made, and I'm very, very afraid of this, that the authorities could be like, no, you run uniswap.org, it's registered Hayden Adams, it is, you set the DNS records, you're facilitating trade, you're facilitating an exchange exchange type of relationship or money transfer hosted on your domain, hosted on your name, so hence you are responsible, right? Something is going to happen. I'm extremely scared of this notion, and then, what are you going to do? So the solution to the problem is you should let your own clients, your own users run their own UIs, so you can be in the clear and be like, well, like, I write the software, and that's not illegal. Writing software is open, right? But if you are facilitating, that means it's like, say, for example, you write BitTorrent, right? Like, so for example, you have some files that you're sharing that is deemed illegal. Say you're sharing music, right? You write BitTorrent. No, that's not illegal. You write the software, you let it go. But if you run the BitTorrent client and you're hosting the files yourself, that's illegal, right? So that's why, you got to be decent. There's regulatory risk, right? And number third is cost. Today, don't quote me on this, but I believe to run a full node for an Ethereum node costs about $25,000 on Infura. Well, there's another. I'll go into the whole like centralization there, but costs about $25,000 to run, and decentralized clouds will probably right now it's 1/3. So if you like money, you probably will like decentralized cloud, right? So 3 things, right? DeFi needs to be open. Open finance needs open cloud. I'm going to say it again. Open finance needs open cloud. Being on Amazon, being on Cloudflare, you're not decentralized. Prove me wrong. Number 2, there's a huge regulatory risk that you are basically avoiding, and time is not going to be on your side very soon. Third, there is cost, right? There's cost advantage being on the D cloud. If you don't like money, don't be on the D cloud. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Thank you for that. That was very, very interesting. And sadly, we're already at the end. I would actually really love to have talked to you both much longer, to be honest. But maybe just to wrap up, closing remarks. Eric, would you like to start? Just any closing remarks or any major points that we should remember from this talk?
Yes, I think people take their privacy, and they take their rights and internet freedom for granted. And every day, I think a little more and more, that kind of freedom is being taken away from us. And a lot of people don't see, I think, even currently, the dangers of that. We're hearing more and more news regarding a lot of the censorship that's going on, a a lot of the privacy leaks and hacks, ransomware, all this stuff is happening right before our eyes, whether you're reading it or not. I mean, even governments and individuals, a lot of times they feel like, well, we're not the targets of this kind of stuff, but they don't realize they are. And like I mentioned earlier, people's data is, their privacy, it's all being violated, and it's all being stolen, it's all being sold. So we have solutions kind of to that. And if you want to check out Deeper Network, I'm just going to give us a plug. It's www.deeper.network, and we have solutions for censorship and your privacy. And then also early, because we're building this ecosystem, you'll have early gateway access to Web3. And so I think people need to take this more seriously, and they have to really, really start to understand the dangers of centralization and the abuse of power that Google, Amazon, and Cloudflare, all these centralized VPNs that are out there, that's happening. And so yeah, take it seriously and look for solutions. And there's a lot right now being built in the blockchain industry, and we're one of them. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And Greg, would you also like to give some closing remarks?
Yeah, Eric said it very beautifully. Like, people don't take privacy very seriously. When you look at how people take privacy, a thought comes to my mind. There was this quote from Rosa Luxemburg, who was a philosopher at the beginning of the 10th century, and she said, people with chains, people that don't move don't notice their chains, right? So right now you are in this chains by the centralized infrastructure that are literally exist because you're comfortable with it, right? And those are your chains. And you don't notice them till you move, but the moment you start moving and really putting these into perspective, you'll see it's kind of fucked up, right? So yeah, decentralized infrastructure is ready. DWeb is here. Adoption is growing, and I hope people will now be in a situation that they can take decentralized web more seriously, right? So with that, I'm always available on Twitter. If you agree or disagree, please reach out to me. My handle is Greg Osuri. And if you want to learn more about Akash, go to akash.network. And if you're building on decentralized web, talk to me. We have an amazing grants program that we're funding companies. So come talk to me on Twitter, and happy to facilitate.
Thank you both very much. I really learned a lot. I really enjoyed this panel. Thank you both so much for your time. And yes, I hope you have a great rest of the DeFi Summit panel talks coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.